On today's episode of Locked on Wild, if it were me, I'd probably pass on Perron.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. You can also find us on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We're going to talk more about Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now free on the Google Play or App Store. Game on. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us as we take a look at a crazy finish to round one in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll talk about the Minnesota Wild potentially being in on free agents, why there are some that I just would rather they stay away from entirely. And we'll talk about the chances that Riley Heidt actually makes the team out of training camp. And we'll also get you set for the draft lottery here this week as well. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, joined every Monday by Alex Micheletti. And again, I'm going to consider this a victory Micheletti Monday because we had 2 Game 7s over the weekends. We had the first game in round 2 between the Rangers and the Hurricanes.
That finished unhinged, too.
They were all fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, both Game 7s were as close as you can get. And Boston ended up prevailing after looking like garbage in Game 6. They looked like a wet paper towel in Game 6. And then in Game 7, they do enough to be able to get past Toronto. Toronto, another year in which just can't get by round one. Very, very Wild-like. Just cannot get past round one. I'm of the belief that some major changes are coming for Toronto because you can't continue. And I say this, and we are seeing it play out in front of our very eyes. You can't just keep running it back. Like, it's one thing to be a dynasty and saying, okay, we're going to take this formula and try to do it again. But you have to attack a problem from different angles because guess what? If you try one particular route and you don't succeed, probably not going to work the next time.
Well, look, I mean, they made their team to score goals, and the problem wasn't the defense and the goalie. It was the big guy scoring, and it didn't work out, which is crazy to think that they put in all that money into that core 4, and then they just couldn't produce. I mean, William Nylander tried when he got back into the series, but it just just wasn't enough. Mitch Marner was AWOL again. That's the guy that's probably going to have to get moved.
Yeah,
you're going to have to talk to him this summer and see if he'd be willing to get moved somewhere. Utah.
Well, and you have you have all the injuries to the goalies. You got Joseph Woll, who pitches.
He was incredible.
0.2 seconds away from a shutout in Game 6. And then he gets hurt and he cannot play in Game 7. You've got Austin Matthews missing multiple games of the series. You've got William Nylander missing some time. Like, it could not have been more chaotic for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it just is further, like, the thing that I learned about the thing that I learned in both game 7s is you just have to have players that are willing to step up and to do whatever is necessary. I mean, you look at the scorers in both of those games that ended up with the game-winning goals, and it was just a different guy. It seemed like every night. Radek Faksa with the game winner. How about
he had missed the past couple days too? Games.
How about Wyatt Johnston stepping up?
Can't even drink a beer legally.
Can't even drink a beer legally in the United States, and he is helping the Stars win a playoff series. You have Hampus Lindholm scoring in game 7 for the Boston Bruins. You have to have everybody fully buy in and be ready to do whatever is asked of them at the moment in which it is asked, because in game 7s especially, the opportunity is there for a second, and if you don't seize it, it's gone.
And it goes to show you how important shutdown defensemen are in game 7s. I mean, Chris Tanev was a maniac in that game for the Stars. He just shut down all of Vegas's top guys. It was incredible work. And Dallas's fourth line, hey, shout out Sam Steele. He was great. Craig Smith, he's been around for a long time in the same division that the Wild play in. I mean, he was a menace forever with Nashville, and he's been all around. And Radek Faksa comes in the lineup, gets the game winner. Albeit lucky, he still was the man to shoot the puck. So that was what Dallas was doing compared to Vegas. Vegas was overpassing. Dallas was just getting pucks on net, and you never know what's going to happen. Aiden Hill he's one of the biggest goalies in the league, and it took a crazy bounce to get the game winner by him. So goes to show you, just get it on that.
I thought it was really interesting too how they were talking about down the stretch in the series between Dallas and Vegas. Kenny Albert and I think it was Eddie Olczyk was in the booth with him. Time and time again, they went out of their way to talk about how Vegas just looked gassed, and that you had guys who were off for a long period.
Hurdle did not look good. He did not look good all series.
So it's great that they got them back. Like, good for Vegas for getting those guys back before the series started. But like, they hadn't skated in a game in months. Like, there was no conditioning.
Shea Theodore didn't look good either. I mean, and he's such an important part of their team. But the big thing too with Vegas is the empty nets that they missed. I mean, oh my goodness,
multiple.
Marchessault too, and Marchessault's he's gonna see that one in his nightmares, because this might have been his last game as a Vegas Golden Knight, because he's a free agent and he's gonna want to cash in one more time. So I don't know if Vegas can afford to pay him unless they traded other guys, and I don't think they want to do that.
No, probably not. Which is okay, because the Wild have money to spend, so they'll.
I got that question a lot in messages. I was like, with what money? It's like the SpongeBob meme where he puts up I have $2. That's
you've got 3 $1 Monopoly bills. Is what the Wild have. No, they have some cap space, and obviously, depending on what moves are made this offseason, there's potential for more. There's also potential for more to be available to go get 1 or 2 particular pieces if you fill a bunch of spots on the roster with young players on minimal deals. And if Jared Spurgeon starts the season on long-term injured reserve, you have a lot of different things that can lead to more cap space. But this was mentioned a while back, and obviously the fact that it is mentioned means that there's legitimate steam behind it. But there are a couple of names that have been linked to the Minnesota Wild on the free agency side of things, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super thrilled about it. So we'll talk about some of the names that have been linked early on to the Minnesota Wild and the money that they have to be able to spend to get an impact top 6 player. We will discuss those names as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder, this week we are going to start player report cards. We're going to start at the top with an easy one. Kirill Kaprizov will be our first player report card. A little bit of a new format this year for these, so I'm excited to unveil them, and we are going to have a lot of audience participation. By the time you are watching this episode, you can go to the Locked on Wild community tab and cast your vote as to the letter grade you think Kirill Kaprizov should get. I'm going to hope it's only one particular letter based off the season that he just had, but we've also got another poll on X that will be up. So a lot of different spots, and we will factor fan voting in to this, in addition to the other categories that we'll be taking a look at as well. So Kirill Kaprizov season eval coming tomorrow here on Locked on Wild. But back to the task at hand. Alex, it was the Worst Seats in the House podcast. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta from a couple of weeks ago got heated. It got tense. It got contentious. There was wide-ranging talk on a bunch of different things. Russo took the position of got to give the prospects an opportunity to see what they're worth, see where they're at in the process. And Anthony LaPanta went the opposite route and said, no, you need to bring in more veteran talent to take pressure off of the young players and allow them more time to season down in Iowa. But a couple of names were thrown out as potential fits in free agency because it seems pretty likely that the Wild will do something. And one of the names that Russo threw out was David Perron. Please, no. Please, no. And here's why. It's a simple answer to the question. David Perron is going to be 36 by the time free agency starts. He'll be 36 years old. He is coming off of his fewest amount of goals in a season since 2017, 2018. He had 17 goals in 76 games. He had 30 assists, 47 points in 76 games. If you go after a guy like David Perron, you are adding to what is already the crux of the problem with this team. You are adding another veteran who is beyond the good years of their career to clog up a spot in the top 6. And would he be better than Marcus Johansson in that spot? Probably. It's a low bar to set. But this is a team that needs to be thinking about maximizing prospects as opposed to adding more vets. I am staunchly against this for many reasons, but the first being he's 36, and we just need to, the Wild need to avoid getting sucked into the trap of this guy has beaten us so many times. Let's see if he can channel that into a full productive season. Like, no, you don't have to go down that road. You really don't. Yeah,
I'm 100% with you. There's younger options out there, and maybe if you can create a little bit more space by trading Gus too, that would really help too. You're just so limited because a lot of these guys, I don't know if David Perron would, but a lot of these guys are wanting multi-year contracts.
Yeah,
They aren't going to want a one-year deal, so that really hinders what they can do as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what Bill Guerin does to try to create a little bit more cap space.
You know what I would rather do? I would rather take, because I know I talked about this on the live show yesterday. I know the initial return suggestion for Philip Gustafsson has been like a draft pick. What if you approach a playoff team that has a prospect or two that are just having trouble breaking through, similar to what happened with Declan Chisholm? Declan Chisholm was blocked by all of the defensemen above him in the lineup. Now, Winnipeg opted to put him on waivers, and the Wild capitalized that way. I would rather take an opportunity to poach somebody from a playoff team on the young side and say, well, hey, this guy's blocked. This team has a ton of forwards. It's going to be tough for this guy to crack the lineup. Let's bring him over here and really take advantage of this situation. I would much rather see the team do that.
There's a guy that was not on a playoff team, but a guy that I've always been intrigued with, and being a college hockey guy, Kent Johnston with Columbus. It just seems, he has so much talent, and he's a free agent, but that's just a guy that would be, I think, would fit in really well with the Wild. Another guy, I mean, I wish they had more cap space, but they would maybe have to do a trade to do it too, is Marty Necas with Carolina. He's a free agent, restricted, but I mean, man, imagine him next to Kirill.
That'd be absurd. The other name that was floated was Anthony Mantha.
Yeah.
Russo mentioned that in one of his more recent articles. And again, same thing. He's at least on the left side of 30, but it's the same thing. Like, folks, we have been talking about this extensively, and it's a problem for this team right now, is that you have a bunch of guys that all are at similar talent levels that are blocking prospects in the middle six, especially. Second and third lines, I think it's the most glaring issue, is you just have a ton of guys that are just existing.
They can't get slower too. That's that's the issue. Look at, I mean, it was great to add Pat Maroon, but I mean, he was slow, and it just, they can't get older and slower. The game is getting younger and faster. And look at this division. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. You look at Dallas, and it's just like, or the end of the Sagan Ben run is coming. Pavelski looks like he might hang him up. I mean, he doesn't have a goal. He didn't have a goal in the series. And you look at Wyatt Johnston, and Stankoven is incredible. I mean, he's
really good.
He really hounds pucks, and I mean, he's making, long-term vets turn the puck over, and these guys are just barely into their careers, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to be menaces for the next decade. Robertson was great tonight. He didn't score, but he looked great tonight too. And what more can you say about Miro Heiskanen too on the back end? What a freak! What a freak!
It's gross. Like you see the writing on the wall for Ben Pavelski and Sagan.
Yeah. And
you just turn right to Stankoven, Wyatt Johnston, Rupe Hintz, and Jason Robertson. Like,
that's a solid core. And then you take a look at Ottinger, and he's only 25. Can you believe that? He's not even in like what they consider prime yet, and he's already this good. It's insane.
I hate it so much. Yes. I hate it so much. But this is. And we talked about it on Friday. Like, I didn't mean to start the doomsday clock, but like you can't afford to simply tread water this season.
No.
Like you have to, everything that you do between now and the end of Kirill Kaprizov's current contract has to be with the future in mind. That's the only way that he's going to be able to palate what happens over these next 2 seasons, is if he sees that these guys are like legitimately ready to come in and to just fill all these holes on the roster.
Yeah.
100%. If you just continue to veteran band-aid this thing, then you may as well trade him right now. Like, that's just the reality of the situation, is if you continue to try to sew up a carotid artery tear with a Band-Aid, then Bill Guerin better start getting his LinkedIn resume updated. Like, you have to take proactive steps to see what you have coming next, which is why it's encouraging to also talk about the fact that there's legit steam that Riley Heidt plays more than 9 games with the Wild next year. And so we'll finish by talking about that. We'll also discuss the draft lottery as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wilds after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Game off. We got to pause here to talk more about one of the most amazing mobile apps I have downloaded onto my phone in quite some time. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about Monopoly Go, but there's just so much more good stuff to get to in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There are incredible prizes such as unique stickers, playing pieces, plus who doesn't love to taunt? You can get emojis to taunt your opponent when you knock their buildings down or steal money from them in a heist. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to follow us everywhere that you can. Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, YouTube, all of your favorite audio platforms. If there is a social media app that exists that I have not heard of, will be on there soon. So make sure to follow along. We've got full content coming for you here as the rest of the off season rolls along. So party doesn't stop just because the games are done. But Alex, I wanted to read you an excerpt from the latest mailbag from Joe Smith and Michael Russo. I read you the following. I got to find it first. Okay. Do you think Riley Heidt will impress enough to take a roster spot? The answer, point blank, yes. The Wild are going to give Heidt, one of the WHL's top scorers, every chance to make the big club out of camp. He has put together an impressive rise and two-way game, and it would not be a surprise to anyone in the organization if he shows he's an NHLer. The key, though, is that general manager Bill Guerin and the staff don't want Heidt to be a fourth liner in his first foray into pro hockey. If Heidt is here, he'll get top 6 or middle 6 minutes and power play opportunities. Thank God. So if Heidt shows he's ready in camp or in a 9-game NHL tryout to start the 2024-2025 season, we could see him sticking. Keep in mind, however, that thrusting Heidt into a top 6 role right off the bat is a lot of pressure to put on a 19-year-old who has yet to play pro hockey. That should be something the Wild consider, especially if they're thinking of moving Marco Rossi. Okay, lot to get to here. So if Riley Heidt is somebody that you want to see make the team but are afraid to give too much on the plate to in his first go, you know what would be a fun, like, I know we've talked about the line combinations of like, hey, put Ryan Hartman and Liam Ugrin with Murat Huznadinov. Like, if you're looking to get Riley Heidt into a role, there's just a perfect one that is waiting to be filled. It's that second line wing spot. And whether it be Heidt himself filling that spot or Liam Ugrin with then Heidt being on the third line with Huznadinov, like if there's a concern about having a guy that brings you skill and you're worried about pigeonholing them into a small role, hey, guess what? Go put a vet in that spot.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I just looked it up. Right. Guess how many points he had the past 2 seasons in the WHL?
It's over 300.
It's 214 points. It's absurd. He had 117. And a guy, I brought up this guy, a couple of times on the show, but Zach Benson on the Buffalo Sabres, he made it the entire year. He didn't just take his 9 games and go back to junior. He stayed on the team the entire year. And I looked up his last year in the WHL, and he had 98 points. So I had 117. So I mean, he outdid what Benson did in his last year of junior, and that translates to that skill isn't just going to go away. I mean, it might take a little bit, but that is going to translate to the NHL. I mean, he scored at every level. He was a steal of a pick, and he is going to have all that energy and swagger coming in and saying that he wants to belong, and it could. It'd be nice to have that skill in the lineup with the Wild, because as we've seen, they've been such a one-line team, and a guy that can do all the playmaking like he can, it would help so much with second power play, and just not always having to rely on Kirill to do everything.
Yeah, it's like trying to put a Ferrari engine into a Model T. Is what the Wild are currently doing. I really hope that analogy sticks, because it sounded really good in my head. They're just, you have to be faster. You have to be more skilled. You have to find a way to add more size too. Like, This roster just kind of got pigeonholed into they're old, they're slow, and they're small.
They don't hit
very quickly. And so you need to find ways to add skill to this lineup. And I'm sorry, those roster spots for those fourth line guys should be up for grabs and should be taken by some of these players. Like if Riley Heidt is good enough, give him the spot. Like, he completely missed me with he's got to get his seasoning in Iowa. Like, what more does a player have to prove? If they're good enough, they should play.
Yeah, he dominated junior. He can't go to Iowa, so give him the chance to stay with the big club all year and use his minimal contract to your advantage. It's just like the NFL with these quarterbacks that are on their rookie deals. Go all in while you can before you have to pay them, and that's what the Wild have to do. They they are in the buyouts still, and you have to get creative. And I know we don't want it to happen, but Marco Rossi is one of the only guys that they can look at to try to get different assets to get maybe bigger. And the same thing with Gustafsson. I know Bill talked about having a goalie rotation of 3, but that's like it's the same thing in another NFL analogy. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have you've got none. You got none. So I mean, I think it's just goofy to have a 3 goalie rotation, and just I don't think Wallstedt and Iowa is going to do him any favors because they've been horrible. They didn't make the playoffs, and it's hard to miss the playoffs in that league. So it's just a conundrum that I saw that he Gustafsson had a shutout with Team Sweden over there. So hopefully some of the other NHL team scouts were watching that, and they call Bill on Gus.
Hopefully the Kings, honestly, go get yourself, and Byfield in particular is probably too rich of a target. Yes. But go get somebody like that. The theme that I
like Lafreniere. He's all right.
go get somebody who is having trouble breaking through, not because they're not good, but because they're on a really good team.
Alex Turcotte. I mean, he was a top 5 pick. You remember that? It's crazy. They gambled on him, and it hasn't really worked out the best. But that's a guy that has a lot of talent too.
Like, you should just be trying to amass as much talent and skill as you can, because that gives you more opportunities for players to hit their peak and be able to elevate in the lineup. I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. And
that's probably why I'm not a GM.
Right. And I mean, the pressure is on Bill Guerin to do something. They can't just fully run this back. And, Craig is missing that playoff gate. So he wants to be back there as soon as possible. And they always spend to the cap. So they got to do everything they can to get back to the playoffs soon.
Well, and it's frustrating too, because I've mentioned a few times during this first round of the playoffs, hey, that series reminds me of, the Wild in this series. And it's negative. It's always negative. Toronto, Boston, I was I'm getting Wild Stars vibes from this series.
100%.
And that was not a compliment.
No. I mean, and look at Peter DeBoer. I mean, he's 8-0 in game 7s, and he just outcoaches these Western Conference coaches. It's incredible, and he gets in players' heads, gets in the other coaches' heads. It's incredible, the adjustments he makes. He puts Radek Fosca into the lineup, who he hadn't played in a couple games, and he gets the game winner. It's just you can't make that up, right? They're down 0-2 in the series, and they come back and win it in 7. It's you don't see that a whole lot.
No.
Credit to Peter DeBoer, but it goes to show you too, watching these series, how much of a gap there is for the Wild to climb. Isn't it? It's
Painful.
unbelievable. It's
painfully evident.
And it's not just the top 6, it's the bottom 6 of some of these teams. They are so like into their systems correctly, and they just make the right plays. They don't take dumb penalties like the Wild do. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's not a short list of problems that need to be fixed, and
getting assistant GMs is the number one. Someone that can negotiate contracts and help Bill and not have to rely
help with the salary
on the
cap.
league. Yeah, it's like, oh man, how can you can't operate the fact that they went that far without it.
Yeah, that happened in November.
Yeah, no one else in the league had that type of situation. It's insane.
Unbelievable. One area in which the Wild can help kind of add some skill to the cupboard, or in this case, a potential impact defensive prospect, if that's the route that they look to go, is through the draft. And the NHL draft lottery is coming up this week, Alex. It's on Tuesday. A reminder just as to how this all works is first overall pick is awarded by a drawing of ping pong balls. A team can only jump 10 spots, so only the top 11 teams are eligible for the first pick. So that is that's your first drawing. If a team in the 12 to 16 range wins the first drawing, the first pick will be awarded to the worst team. So Chicago is pretty likely going to get that number one unless somebody jumps them within those 11 picks. Then a second drawing is held to determine the other lottery winner. Like the first drawing, the second winner can only jump up 10 spots, but this time it is using the reseeded order following the first drawing. This second drawing will not affect the teams with locked-in positions from the first drawing. If a 10-spot jump is to a pick that is already locked in, this team will receive the next available pick. Teams are only allowed to improve their positioning via the lottery twice in a 5-year period, beginning with the 2022 lottery, which is something that the Wild don't necessarily have to worry about. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's a 2% chance that the Wild jump up, but more than likely they are going to end up at lucky number 13 for their pick.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make that up, right? That they're kind of just. I saw the odds. It's like I think like 90% that they stay where they are. So, yeah. But this is a draft, at least in the first round, that you can really hit on, and a guy that can make a good impact. So I'm curious to see if they go the D route or forward, because it's D heavy right away at the beginning. There's a guy named Zeev Buium who was on Denver that just absolutely incredible, but his stock, because of the run Denver made, he jumped higher than what the Wild, but you never know too. You never know, but that would be just an amazing player to stick next to Brock Faber for the next decade plus. And there's also a guy out there that for some reason is dropping, but maybe it's because of all the amazing D prospects, is Cole Yzerman. I mean, he broke the record of goal scoring there at the national development team, and was a former Gopher commit and decided to decommit and go to BU. So that was an interesting choice, but he's an amazing goal scorer, and he would really help the Wild's skill level at the forward position. That would be interesting to see if Bill Guerin, who's a former Boston College Eagle, if he were to take a BU kid. But those are a couple of the names that would be intriguing for the Wild, depending on where they land. And also a guy that I brought up in the past too, Jerome McGinley's kid, That would be that would be fun too, just because Jerome was such a wild killer.
He was an absolute wild assassin.
Yeah, his son is having an amazing junior career right now too. So we'll see.
Well, I think the good part is that we don't have to worry about the Wild drafting by position of need this draft.
Yeah, hello, Charlie Stramel. We see how that went. Gabe Perron, hello.
And again, like we'll see how it plays out, but rule of thumb, by and large, is to go best player available.
EPA
in the draft.
No matter the sport, and you figure
BPA
out later.
And you figure it out from there.
Look at, I know we're bringing up all the different sports, but the San Diego Padres just traded for Luis Arraez. They don't have a position for him, but they traded for a good player when a good player became available.
Yeah.
And you figure it out later once you get them into the team.
You figure it out after you draft them. So we'll see what happens. We've got draft profiles coming for you this week as well. So going to be a busy week here at Locked on Wild, and we'll talk about potential trade partners for Philip Gustafson and Marco Rossi as well. We got a lot coming at you, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week on either your favorite podcast platforms or on YouTube as well. We've got new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll catch you for the next one.